Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hyperconscious Podcast. Alan, what is hyperconscious?
Once you understand why something is the way that it is, now you have the power to change it. Great conversations with great people and great questions are the keys to the kingdom of unlocking your consciousness.
Every single action that you do starts as a thought. When you control the way you think, you will control the way you act, and you will control the way you live. That is hyperconscious. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of the Hyperconscious Podcast. Today, Alan and I were lucky enough to sit down with Mr. Kevin Armentrout, former Marine and combat veteran, author of Relentless State of Mind, and a speaker. He's actually spoken with Tony Robbins.
Yeah, so he knows Tony and Sage. He's been on that stage at Date with Destiny several times. Hopefully, Kevin and I will end up at Date with Destiny at some point. But this episode with Kevin was awesome because he's a no excuses, straightforward, all about the fundamentals kind of guy. Again, been in the military. We bring a lot of value in this episode. Please do not miss it.
He went into his stories in the military, how they were ambushed by RPGs. He also shared a story with us and with you that he's never shared before. Super vulnerable. We appreciate him so very much, and we hope you will enjoy.
Talk to you soon.
Bye. Geographically? Geographically. This is cool. So I would say make sure that pretty face is showing.
Yes, true.
They're going to want to see that thing. They're going to want to see that thing, Alan. That face. You good? Ready? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of the Hyperconscious Podcast. We have a very special guest today. He is a former Marine and combat veteran. He is a speaker and the author of Relentless State of Mind. Mr. Kevin Armentrout, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me, guys.
We appreciate you sitting down with us today, and we just had a little preamble, and we had a preamble call a couple days ago. And ever since Alan and I spoke with you, we've been saying that this is going to be a great podcast episode because you're no nonsense, no excuses. And like you said right in the preamble there, you're the only person in control of your life. So we're very excited to sit down with you.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited too.
So I guess tell the listeners a little bit about you before we start firing questions at you, just so they can have a little bit of reference to who you are.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Florida born and raised. I joined the Marine Corps back in 1998, fresh out of high school at the ripe age of 17. I did 9 years in the Marine Corps as an infantryman, a CQB guy, and ended up running a QRF in Iraq after a couple combat deployments. After some success, I guess you could call it, and in combat arms, I got out of the military but stayed on Camp Pendleton in California, where I became a tactics instructor and culture advisors and some other things, working in the government contracting side as an operations manager, a training manager, and various different billets. Where I really focused so much of that on really starting to understand what it took to really hone a combat mindset. I mean, I had been training that with myself and my own teams, throughout my military career. But as a tactics analyst and instructor, really got to step back and look at unit after unit coming through and really analyze the mind of what it takes to be successful in combat. Flash forward, a little bit after that, I was always doing fitness on the side. I was a competitor in men's physique. I started coaching as well. I was a master trainer, sports nutritionist, you kind of name it in that realm. And I really started to see that mindset played such a huge role in everything in life, dealing with weight loss clients and things like that. I mean, I was the type of trainer that, would take you from a session, we'd drive to the grocery store, I'd buy your groceries for you, take them to your house, show you how to cook, meal prep for you, pack them in your fridge. and then realized that, even after that, some clients still failed.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of going like, wow, like what am I doing wrong as a trainer? Like, how can I not motivate this person? And I realized that so much of it had nothing to do with the program or the food or the exercise or repetitions, and so much on how they associated themselves with exercise, with body image, with everything else, which all became this mindset. We dive deeper and deeper into that, and I really started understanding how much the combat mindset that I had been studying, training, and teaching matched up with weight loss, matched up with addiction, matched up with overcoming other triumphs. That so much of it had to do with the mindset and the intention behind how you viewed yourself, what your story was, which is a big thing we can get into. And so I really started changing a lot of the way I approached my clients and doing stuff like that. I mean, I ran a meal prep company for a little bit. So I'd been around the block in every kind of corner of the fitness industry and self-help kind of stuff you could do. And it was really a good thing. And right about that time, a small individual named Tony Robbins, little guy,
Very small.
he reached out to me.
Yep.
He had reached out to me to help him out at his infamous Date with Destiny, which is what the Netflix, I'm Not Your Guru special is about. And I was able to be kind of a motivational assistance and some of the stuff he does there, usually with a weight loss client. And it really opened up my eyes to so much stuff I was doing kind of intuitively as a trainer and as instructor and coach that he just put to process and kind of opened up like, oh, wow, and somebody that's been doing something for 40 years, I mean, the man's a master at it. And it was just like, oh, I kind of already did that, but there's a process to it. And here's the reason why. And that really opens up even more to how I was able to help people and change things. And that turned into me writing a book about it. I still kind of help out Tony. I've done 5 Date with Destinies with him, and it's been an honor to be a part of kind of that family and world. It's definitely been an improvement to not just how I can help other people, but to my own life, my own personal life, how I am as a father, a husband, and just a man in general. And so now, long story jammed into a few minutes, I'm here with you guys talking with the Hyperconscious, and hopefully we can have a great show to pass on a lot of that of what I've learned over the years onto your listeners.
Hell yes.
We really appreciate you talking about all of that. So I have so many questions that jumped off the page. I'm glad that you went that deep that quick.
He's going to say that another 46 times, Kevin.
At least. At least. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask you in particular was your experience in the military. Now, you know that we know Wade and Phil, and we had them on the podcast, Two Marines, One Mike podcast, and they were the ones who suggested that you. Oh, thank you. They were the ones that suggested we sit down with you, and I'm so glad that they did. And we asked them this question too, but I'm curious about your specific answer. So, what is it about the military and your particular military experience? You say the combat mindset that you think would benefit someone who's a civilian to really embody, especially when it comes to the word relentless and how what that means to you.
So, I listened to the way that they answered it, and then they're right on. The difference, I think, in how I would answer it is because I think that's become my bread and butter, my realm of what I actually teach in. And I don't really so much say that it's the military perspective. I was very lucky to be in a particular unit and training the way that we did, and just the leadership and mentors I had in my life that really kind of brought that to me. But in terms of combat and how I've switched that into life and how I use it to teach it is when you deploy into a forward environment that's going to be violent and, war and combative, there is a detachment and a preparation that is involved in what you are going to encounter. It is almost where the if is taken out and it's just the when is replaced. Like you are going to receive contact, you are going to have casualties, you are going to have all these adversities thrown at you. So you really start to mentally prepare yourself for that, because it's not a if anymore. It's not this 1 in a million chance. And the difference is how do you take that, because it's something that you really dive deep into mentally to prepare yourself so that you can operate with all the training and all the things that you've put in play prior to that, so that you can almost remove the emotion from it and think from an intelligent and an intuitive standpoint and logically, and not very fearful or emotionally driven. So there's a lot of emotional intelligence behind it. The problem is how do even military members translate that back into the civilian world? Guys still struggle when they come back and they're transitioning. And how do you take that as a person and teach that to somebody who's never been to combat or understand it? And where it comes into play is understanding the big difference between one of my big teaching points is acceptance versus expectance.
I actually have that page open right now. I was going to lead into that. Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. So, and that's why I say combat kind of makes it easy. I don't want to say that, we're this different, shell of a person that, oh, well, I'm not a military guy, so I can't do that. No, it's just that when you deploy to a forward environment, the acceptance is ingrained in you, and it's the expectance is going to be there too. So those kind of go hand in hand. And what I mean by that is that when you travel around the world in your daily life, and whether it be business, financial, relationships, personal, I think so many people don't want to accept certain things to happen to them, so they just completely eliminate them. They don't want to think about any type of negativity that may come their way. We're very much a generation that's starting to go into this positive thinking, that everything is about positive light, positive view, positive thinking. And I think that's the biggest mistake you can possibly make, because when that happens, if that happens, you're nowhere near going to be mentally prepared for it to handle something that is of any type of traumatic value to your life. So the way that I try to teach clients to help them out is to understand that there's an acceptance factor that, hey, these things may happen to me. And I don't need to focus on them. I don't need to spend a lot of time on them. I just need to have a mental capacity that says this is a possibility. And if that happened, what would I do? And how would I prepare myself to get through it? And the small little bit of mental conditioning you can do in that manner prepares you then for if and when that day happens. And the difference is that unlike combat, I don't walk around expecting it. I don't expect contact to happen. I don't expect, family members to die. I don't expect, a traffic accident to happen the moment I leave my house. I don't expect to get robbed. I don't expect to get mugged. Those are all things that, that's called anxiety. That's a horrible way to live. The difference is having a mental preparation, understanding that, hey, those are possibilities in my life. And have I ever thought about what I would do if they were ever presented to me? And that's really where I think the military has changed things for me.
We listened to a podcast that you were on, and you talked about a specific incident regarding you, an RPG, and 20 feet of distance. Can you jump into that just for perspective? Because we had Brian Wood on. He's he was in the British military, and he was involved in the Battle of Danny Boy, and there was it was a whole thing. They were ambushed by insurgents, and there was hand-to-hand combat with bayonets. And it's like, when we hear stories like that, that brings such perspective that, number one, how lucky we are that we don't have to go through that. But number two, that must make you appreciate life so much more when you can actually see it right in front of you, that your life could have been over that easy.
That's very true. And side note that, because we'll come back to that in terms of appreciation of life.
Sure.
But so it's a story I actually use a lot, because he used it in terms of obviously the kind of combative chaos that it was. I actually use it in leadership talk. So basically what it was during the first democratic elections of Iraq back in 2004, very hotspot city, Ramadi. And we were doing continuous vehicle patrols. The streets were pretty much empty. And I had a young Marine that grabbed me by the shoulder in the back of my Humvee and said, "Hey, I just saw a guy poke his head over that wall." The reason why it was kind of distinctive is that we were driving down the border of our area of operation on a map. So for us to go left where that individual was seen would have pushed us into the Army's area of operation. So we previously on that same street for the past 48 hours straight had made a right at this corner over and over and over and over, because that was our limit of advance per se on where we could go. So we decided to go left instead. I trusted the young man's judgment. I made a judgment call that I shouldn't care about an imaginary line on a map, and I went left instead. We drove around this backside of this hotel and foiled an ambush basically, and ended up seeing 20 guys with weapons and RPGs right in front of us, who all scattered into the alleys. One of them turned around, shocked himself with an RPG on his shoulder, pointed it right at us. And so we ended up flooring it at him and opening fire on him. He ended up luckily dropping the RPG and running down the alley instead. And we tried to make a right-hand turn to chase him. And at about 30, 35 miles an hour, slammed into the wall. It caught the front right tire of the Humvee, ripped it clean off. And the Humvee like landed on the RPG. We got out, and the hotel that we had just driven under is now 4 stories above us. There's people inside, insurgents inside there, that are just sticking AKs out of windows and shooting straight down, dropping grenades out of windows. So there's explosions going on around us. There's a downed vehicle. We're in a very tight alleys. There's 4 Humvees kind of stretched out around corners, and guys are running in every direction. So it's chaos pretty much at its peak on where you think, because you really need to act in that situation. And so, you have people that flee, think about just, a group of kids that run in every direction. So it's not like you have this enemy that's at one space in front of you. You have an enemy that ran, in every direction out of alleys. You have now people above you, people beside you. So when you're not a large force, we are 20 guys, but you have 20 guys inside Humvees. You now have one guy that's a driver, one guy that's a gunner, people that are actually on the ground. You're down to 8 to 10 at best. And that's not a lot of force to maneuver around against an equal size force. You usually kind of want to outnumber the guy you're going after. So it just became a very chaotic situation. I ended up getting some support out there. Ended up, eliminating a lot of the enemy, maintaining security around the vehicle through the entire time, so we didn't have to actually damage it or destroy it. And ended up getting a tow truck out there and just taking it home and collecting ourselves to fight another day. But the leadership aspect of that, and the big important part of that story of why I use it so much, is because I think it really trains to this principle that I talk about speak last, which is it comes from the business world. But the speak last principle is basically, if I walk into a room as a businessman and I say, here's the problem, here's what I think it is, and here's how I think we should fix it, what do you think? You've pretty much killed any innovation in that room at like the 90% margin. People are just going to agree with the boss. Most people aren't going to speak up, anything else. But if I walk in the room and I say, hey, we have a problem, what do you guys think? I get a lot more innovative thought process. I get to see what's actually happening, kind of, the terms that we would use, like boots on the ground, what's happening in the trenches. I get a lot more out of my employees, out of my team. And I'm breeding this kind of culture within my company or within my team, within my even military unit, that they are allowed to speak. They are allowed to have thoughts. They are allowed to bring things to the table. And I value that. I value their opinions. I value what I do. And that's something that has to be done over time. And I look back at that, and I think if I was kind of your standard military barking orders, everybody listens to me, shut the hell up kind of person, would have that guy been in a situation to think that he could grab me by the shoulder and say that?
Right.
If I didn't have a different mentality about ways, would I have not made a left? Would I have made a right? Because if I would have made that right, I would have made the same right that we always did. I would have ran into a double stacked IED, and that would have basically disabled 2 vehicles and put us right into an ambush position to where all those guys on the ground would have been at a ground level ambush at our rear, and everyone at the hotel would have had an elevated position right above us. And I can guarantee you that casualty would have been a lot different than the way it did. So that was the story that I went over in that one with the WealthFit guys, and a story that I bring up a lot in talking with leadership points.
I think it's super important to bring up a story like that, because I think a situation like that brings the power of our choices in a moment to like a very emotional, like very real level. So one of the reasons why I knew this interview would be so great is because you're so no nonsense. And I'm actually looking at a quote right now saying, the secret is that there is no secret. The law of attraction, or the secret, does not exist, along with the power of positive thinking, powers of the universe, or any other title it may be given. There is no such thing as luck or even coincidence. No matter what you want to call it, it's misguided and serves no real purpose. What does matter is you. Our biology is where the power lies. When fully understood and acted on, it is a relentless power. So in all my research of you, it seems like you're very focused on not just knowledge, but taking the action. And one of the reasons why The Secret has always bothered me, not to say that it's all nonsense or anything like that. Like, I understand quantum physics, I understand Newtonian physics, I understand that thoughts are things, but I think that actions matter so much. And I think that some of the self-help stuff going on right now is very positive thinky and really doesn't bring enough emotion to the power of a choice in a moment and taking the correct action. So in the military, it's life or death. How does someone really apply that mentality in their real life? Because the ripple effect of these small choices can be life or death too, if it's your health or something like that.
Well, you nailed it 100%. Is because you said that the key word is action. And that is the problem 100% with where I think a lot of the self-help category or the positive thinking, I mean, the secret's been around forever, but the reason why I don't like that, and you're right. It's not that because I still preach, positive incantations. I still preach positive thinking. I still preach all that stuff. I just don't like calling it that because it has a very bad realm about it, in my opinion. It's like being in the fitness world and if it fits your macros or paleo diets, they've been sabotaged. They've been taken to the wrong extreme. And so is positive thinking, is because if you rely too much in the universe, if you rely too much in positive thinking, the two biggest things for me that it does is it eliminates the action, because it's basically saying that I don't have to act because the universe will give it to me because my thoughts are good. And then on that back end, I believe that, it sabotages most of your action that you do take, because you're only taking it for the reciprocal effect, meaning that I'm only doing good things because I believe in karma and energy and I want good things to happen to me.
Interesting.
And I don't like that at all, because for me, a person who is rooted in gratitude and grace, and as a Christian believer and just as a person in general, everything that I do to help somebody else is to help somebody else. It's not so that I hope somebody will help me in return. It's not so that I can get the accolades or the joy is just helping. That's what you get back. You get the gratitude feeling within inside you of, wow, I just helped that person. And nobody needs to know about it.
Kevin, I had a moment last night where I posted this on my story. I was just laying in bed, and it's like, sometimes it feels like everything's burning down around me and things just aren't going the way I want them to. But then I realized, like, I got a message that said, you saved my life. And I got a message that said, I'm so unbelievably grateful for you taking the time out of your day to talk to me. And it's like, that's why I do this. I do this to help people. Everything else is a bonus. The money that comes with it, that will come with it, the accolades, the whatever, like that's all a bonus. But at the end of the day, I truly want to be the person that I needed when I was suicidal, when I was hopeless, when I was helpless. So I resonate so very highly with that.
Exactly. And so you asked, how does somebody who's not in the military, that's not in life or death, and I'd like to challenge you and every single one of your listeners that you are in life or death. I believe in grace in a way in this aspect. You were born not of your own accord. You were taken care of. You were raised. I mean, basically from birth till, a small child, 7, 8, 9, you couldn't take care of yourself at all. So you absolutely did nothing for your own existence. You don't deserve it. You don't deserve to be here. You don't deserve to be alive. You don't deserve to have 2 legs, 2 arms. You don't deserve to have a level of intelligence that you do. You don't deserve to be physically fit. All those things that come to this thing to where I feel like the generation is that, they're missing the point of gratitude in this, that like, I deserve this good life. And I want to challenge you that no, you don't. No, you don't. That is what grace is. Grace is understanding that you deserve absolutely nothing. And then gratitude is the understanding of grace. And when you figure those two out, man, you can live life to the absolute fullest. And the funny part is, if you really want to get back on positive thinking and universe and everything else, that's when things will actually start happening for you. And the reason why they're happening for you is not because of the universe, even if that's what you want to look at it. It's because you biologically and neurologically rewired yourself to understand that you are worthless and you mean nothing and you deserve nothing. And the moment you can let go of that kind of egotistical, self-entitled thing, you can start living life to the fullest. And you can actually start understanding that all these things that are happening around you are happening for you and not to you. and you see things differently. And that's why opportunities actually happen for people. That's why all these things start, business opportunities open up, relationships flourish, money starts to increase. It's not because the universe is throwing this back at you because of karma. It's because you start realizing that somebody cutting you off in traffic is not the end of your day. You start realizing that, because the waitress messed your order up, you don't get to treat her badly because you didn't even deserve to be sitting at that booth and ordering that food in the first place. You're just lucky enough to be an American and have the opportunity to sit at a Denny's, like what if you were born in East Africa? What if you're born in the Congo? What if you're living in some village? Like what if you're not born at all? Once you start to understand that, grasp and that, get it, man, opportunities just change because you are different.
Kevin, when did you make that mental shift? Like, when was that clear to you that none of this is promise? None of this is, you know what I mean? Like, when did that become clear to you and you really, really changed your way of thinking?
A little bit of both. So I'll give you, this might be a little bit longer, but I'm going to kind of backtrack. I'm going to give you 3 different, I think, massive changes in my life.
Please do.
Of impacts. So I kind of touched with you guys, but I'll go ahead. This will be the first time I've ever kind of told this story publicly. When I was 17 years old, there's a lot that had to go to it, but myself and my best friend were driving in different vehicles on a road, going from basically one party to another. Extremely slow. He had a big truck. I had a lowrider, and he thought it would be comical to drive in the kind of grassy ditch area of Florida roads next to me. And as he went to go get back on the road behind me, the truck just kind of spun out across the pavement and hit a tree on the passenger side. But it was a old, like, 1960s yellow Dodge step side, small bench seat, no seat belts, that type thing. It did a number on that old truck, though, for even the low speed that we were kind of going. And I slammed on the brakes and I ran back there. And the truck didn't look bad, honestly, from the outside, but it was kind of bent in a position to where, like, the dashboard had come down on his legs and kind of trapped him in the vehicle. And he was sitting there, and without being, like, too graphic, he looked fine, but he was bleeding from quite a few areas from his head. And standing there for the first time, looking at somebody that you truly care about, and literally witnessing, like, their last breaths, literally watching them bleed and not knowing anything on what to do. As a young kid, I was just clueless. The only thing I knew from medical training was what I watched on TV. I didn't know what to do. I kind of halfway crawled in the vehicle and didn't know if I should sit him up. You hear all this stuff about moving somebody's head and neck, and didn't know if I should hold him or, can he hear me? Anything. And that time frame of waiting there for an ambulance to come, this is before cell phones and stuff. It felt like an eternity. And then they literally had to cut the roof off the vehicle with, like, jaws of life, and EMT guys are all over him. And finally they came busting open the door and pulled a gurney out of the back of this ambulance and ran it over to the truck. And I'm like, finally, like, I felt like he had been there forever. And they ran this gurney all the way over to the side of the truck, and then they pulled the white sheet off of it and put it over his body. And I was crushed, man. Like, just that entire feeling, that entire thing never left me. And I joined the Marine Corps not long after that. And I had this kind of feeling in me that I would never, ever in my life feel that helpless feeling again. I would never not know what to do. And I think that threw me on this path of almost being the jack of all trades and the master of none. If I would always learn how to do things. When I was in the Marine Corps, I might as well have been a damn doctor. Like, if I could get EMT training from a doc, I would. If I could go to combat lifesaver school, I would. I would know my job, the guy next to me, the guy above me, the guy below me. I never wanted to be put in a position to where I would be behind a weapon system and I didn't know how to use it. I never wanted a gun to jam and not know what to do about it. I knew how to do call for fire. I knew how to do close air support. I knew how to do anything I could, things that weren't necessarily my responsibility. But I just knew that if it was ever going to be a situation where I needed to know how to do that, I was going to know how to do it. And that continued with me on through life. I mean, I've built my own website. I've learned how to do audiobooks. I've renovated my whole house top to bottom, flipped it. I mean, you name it, plumbing, countertops, built-ins, flooring. I can fix a car. It's just, it's one of those things that, if it's out there and there's an opportunity, I'm going to seize it and I'm going to go after it and I'm going to do it. And so it's always been this thing of just being a master. And then I told you, I got into fitness and started trying to help people and do other things and kind of move along. I really thought I knew what I was doing, and I really thought I knew what I was doing with myself. And me, from combat, from that situation, probably from others, I suffered from PTSD myself. And I went through a lot of these things to where I think I got to a point where I blamed that incident when I was younger. I blamed, a previous divorce I had. I blamed, upbringings. I blamed all this stuff on why I was the way I was. And it wasn't until I really got to this point where I was helping other people that I got to do self-reflection even more. And I thought it was really almost counterproductive if I was going to be diving into helping people if I wasn't at the top of my game. So I really got into this self-reflection, and I was like, so what is it? What is it about me that's so bad? What is it about all the stuff that I've gone through that's made me live my life the way it was? And when I met Tony Robbins, it changed it even more because he's big on people understanding their story. And I had realized that I 100%, and so many of us do it, I had written my own story, that I was a combative, combat veteran with PTSD. And this is the type of things I needed to be to fulfill that story. I had to have hardships in my life. I had to have financial issues. I had to have, a bit of an alcohol problem because that's that fit that mold. And I realized, like, wow, man, like, I'm the only one responsible. Like, I don't have to live up to this story. I don't have to fall into this trap. Like, it's not my parents' fault. It's not anything. It's not combat. It's not any of that. And the moment I realized, like, it was nobody's fault but my own, you start to realize that these are the things that actually define you. And you start looking at every single thing in a different light. So now, I don't want to say thankful because, obviously no one's death is ever going to be something I'm appreciative of. But I look back at that moment in a different light that say, that really changed me. And it really helped because maybe the way I was it saved people's lives in combat because I knew exactly who I was and I knew so much and I was never going to have that feeling again. That was exactly what needed to happen to me at that moment in my life. Maybe the divorce I went through was exactly what I needed to go through in my life to be the husband and the man I am now. It just really changes the thing. So I challenge anybody that's out there, like when they're listening, like life's not happening to you, man. It's happening for you. And everything that happens to you, you have the opportunity to make it a blessing or make it a curse. It can affect you for the rest of your life, or you can become a 10 times better person every time you come out the other side of it.
Kevin, I just wrote on my Instagram today a quote. That resonated so strongly. Thank you for sharing that. I said, whenever you are in emotional pain, you have two choices. You can either escape into a vice or develop a virtue. I truly believe that the amount of time, like life is going to have some pain in it. And when you are in emotional pain, the number of times that we choose to develop a virtue over escaping into a vice is what forms the tapestry of our character and therefore our lives. Kevin, I knew this was going to be an unbelievable rep. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm not wrapping up here. I just resonate so strongly with everything you just said because for the listeners right now, we say this on the podcast all the time, like start noticing the patterns of all these people that are happy, healthy, and productive and fulfilled. They all are living for something greater than themselves, all of them. I really believe that life supports that which supports life. Like even if just from nature, look at the mosquitoes that are, with the spiders and the spiders get eaten by the birds, right? Everything has a purpose and you do too. So my next question for someone out there who feels, I also wrote on my Twitter, when you don't know where you're going or where you want to go, any road will take you there, right? And with any crew. So you'll just end up drifting around. So for you personally, how did you start to hone in on what your purpose is and get some direction in your life?
So first and foremost that I think is I think it goes into fitness. I think it goes into anything. How many times have you heard, I just don't know where to start?
Oh, all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My biggest thing is, of course, nobody does. So nobody knows where to start. So why don't you figure out where you want to end? That's usually a thing. And that's from a very broad perspective, because that's going to change over time. But right now, if you're lost, if you're out there listening, you're like, hey, there's so much I want to do. I want to change this. I want to change that. It's just like in the fitness world, just like with any other goal. I think people try to figure out what's the path where they're at right now. Like, what do I need to do? That's a very difficult question. That's a very difficult task. But if you did the opposite and you say, okay, where do I want to end? All right, this is the type of financial, freedom I want to have, or this is the job I want to have, or this is, just the life in general. Just kind of picture it. And you really have to envision it. This is why like morning meditations and rituals are so great, because if you can really envision and see what you want, the path to get you there is going to be so much easier, because now you do what's called reverse planning. You just come backwards. So I always tell like a fitness client, like, hey, if this is the person you want to see, and you see yourself as this lean kind of eating person, exercising 5-6 times a week, blah, blah, blah. Does that person club every night?
No.
So guess what you got to stop doing right now today?
And couldn't.
Yeah.
And it ruined his whole week.
I just tell them, start working yourselves backwards. I always give the example of buying a home, because it's just an easy like analogy, is that, hey, people say, hey, this is my dream home. And I'm like, hey, that's a great goal. So how do you want to get it? Well, so start working backwards. Well, if this is the dream home, this is the price tag that it comes with. What's the monthly mortgage payment on that? What kind of money do you got to make a month to cover that monthly mortgage payment? Okay. In your current field, how many sales do you have to make that much money a month? Okay. How many client acquisitions do you need to take in to make that kind of money, or to make those kind of sales? All right. So what do you need to do to take in that type of client acquisition? And you have a plan now. So go execute it. That's how you get to that house. Like, instead of just kind of weaseling around on how you get there. And you can do that with every single thing you do in your life. And I can tell you that one of the first things you need to do is purge your life of the crap that is meaningless. And a lot of the times that's going to be your circle that you're currently with right now. So I say that proximity is power. I got that from Tony Robbins. I agree with it 100%. If you want to be a manager of a business, you need to start acting like the manager of a business today. Which means you need to start dressing like that manager. You need to start acting like that manager. You need to start doing things like that manager. And you need to start hanging out with managers. That's the biggest downfall of people is, some of the biggest people that are going to set you back in the fitness world with your weight loss journeys and your health journeys are the same people that I tell you in outside of it, if you're not doing health and fitness. Though it's your close circle, family and friends that look at you and go, why are you doing this? Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, I always tell them, fitness clients, hey, man, the moment you get on this diet, your friends and family are going to be the first ones to try and get you off it.
Yep.
That's really easy to see in the fitness world. What's hard to see is guys out there right now, if you were trying to improve your life, it's really hard to see that your homies and your buddies, whether it be your girls, your guys, and your family and friends are going to be the first ones to try and say, hey, why are you doing this? They're going to stop you from reading books and want you to go out with them and party. They're going to stop you from hanging out with a different crowd that's maybe more successful or has more connections or is more positive light just in general. They're going to ask you, why are you going back to school? Why did you pick up that second job? Why are you hustling at night? They're going to want you to just be the same old you, because that's what they're comfortable with. And comfort is what so much of us like dive into and stay. And it's just a horrible place to live if you're really trying to make changes. You have to get uncomfortable.
Kevin, it's so hard when somebody brings up family and they say my mom and dad don't understand what I'm trying to do. I'll always say to my clients or anybody who reaches out, do you want the life that your mom and dad have? Because you've already told me that they fight and then they're behind on the mortgage payment because they bought a house, to keep up with the Joneses. They want a house that looks like their friends. They want nice clothes. So if somebody reached out to you and said that, all right, Kevin, I think my family is really holding me back, but I have to live with them for the next 3 years while I go to college. I can't afford to move out. How can I get better people in my life? How can I get people who understand me in my orbit?
Well, you got two answers there. So given the scenario that you're given, it's a hard one, because I would have to tell that person, you're in a 50-50 world. If you have to still live with your parents under their roof, I'm old school, man. I think that you kind of have to abide by their rules, So if dad is sending you to college and dad is also paying your rent, your car payment, your insurance, and your cell phone bill, guess what you're doing? You're going to college. Now, that doesn't mean you can't grind, hustle at midnight, and do whatever you want to try and improve your life in a different direction, but that's it. If you want to tell dad, hey, kiss my ass, bro, I'm not going to college. School's not what it is. Public education system, even private education system is garbage, and I'm not falling into that trap. Well, guess what, bro? You better go get your own place. That's just facts of life in that general. So those would be the first two things I say out there. If you want to go against the grain in terms of family, you need to be able to be self-sustainable. If you're not going to be self-sustainable, well, then you need to kind of bite your tongue and do things from the basement or the attic on your own time and on your own dime. It'll be a slower road, but hey, at least you have the comfort of mom doing your laundry and food over on the table and, roof over your head. If you want to do it the old school way, then yeah, you get 5 guys, you live in an apartment together, you sleep on furniture, you sleep on the couch, you go get a mattress for $20 off Craigslist, you put it on the floor, and you make your life happen. But you need to have a vision. And I think so much of what the problem of where a lot of this younger generation, if you're having these people tell you, is because they care so much about what other people think. They care so much about what everyone has this perception of them that nobody's really, I think, people are afraid to grind. People are afraid to put a mattress on the floor because it's hard to bring a girl back to that place. It's hard to put that on Instagram. It's hard to tell people that. I think you should bring it back to like sitting on cardboard boxes and having a laptop on a cinder block. Like, build that business because that's amazing. Because when it's successful, people are going to look back, and that's the thing that people miss, is that people always love looking back at that photo. Right. People love looking at Jeff Bezos in his garage.
Yeah. In 95 when he had to pay 20 different people or get 20 different people to do it $50,000 each before. And the first question to them was, what's the internet? Right.
Yeah. And the funny part is that nobody wants to be Jeff Bezos in 1995 though.
Yeah, exactly.
Which blows my mind.
But Bezos
look at him now.
Exactly, man. Oh, this is
So it amazes me like that's your comeback. When somebody says you got a mattress on the ground, you'd be like, yeah, bro, Dell was started in the garage. Eat it. Like, that's what you tell people. Like, you show them the picture of Mark Cuban sitting on a cardboard box and be like, that's where this started.
Right.
Like that's me. That's my dream. And if you can't be a part of that, bye.
Kevin, what do you think?
That's it. Like, goodbye.
What do you think social media has done to that and entrepreneurship in general? It's like everybody has a Ferrari now. Like, every time I go on Instagram, everybody's got a Ferrari.
and a filtered photo next to it.
Yeah, and it's like, what they don't see, number one, is if that person earned it, good for them. Awesome. That's awesome. But you don't know how they earned it. You don't know what they did. You don't know, the mattresses they slept on. Maybe they were working on a cardboard box. But it's like,
maybe they're 10 years into the journey.
Yeah. So for you, I know you said you were simplifying things and kind of, rearranging the importance of things in your life. So what have you learned from social media and what have you taken away from that? Wow.
I'll be 100% honest, man. I fell into the fitness world. I started competing in 2013. And at a later age, I was 33. I'd already been a personal trainer for, 6, 7, 8 years. And I found myself who I thought was pretty solid, who at least, as an image of who I thought I was.
Oh, Kevin,
really
you're
falling
jacked.
into the social, but I used to be.
You definitely killing it.
I'm still very fit, but I put down the 6,000 calorie a day meals.
I
can't maintain that weight.
I saw some pictures. I was like, Kevin, he would have destroyed me on stage.
But I fell into, just wearing clothes that weren't me, being, trying to act like I was 22. The fitness game was really blowing up on Instagram at the time. And not knocking anyone else's style, but at 33, I didn't need to be wearing skin tight sweatpants and I don't know. It just wasn't me. And I found myself, my wife is an IFBB bikini pro, and both of us together, we really just dove into social media. Everything was about YouTube videos and nutritional infos. And the problem, and so many other people I think do this, is it's shrouded in this belief that you're helping people. I'm out there, I was still grinding every day trying to make stuff, but I'm trying to gain followers so I can teach them about nutrition and I don't know how, but basically in my head, that a picture of my abs is going to help somebody else want to get abs. And, it became this thing to where it really controlled your life. We were living in downtown San Diego, which is a very big fitness bubble. And leaving there really helped us out to really kind of just take a step back and kind of come out of that social media world and go, wow, like that really controlled our lives. And so we really started to evaluate even from right then is like, what do our followers truly get from us? And what are we trying to bring to them? And I really realized that a lot of what I thought I was helping other people was still very egotistical, was still very about me. And that wasn't truly what I ever got into the business for. So I was like, all right, I'm going to start changing the way I make posts. And I wanted to make posts a little bit more real. I wanted to make posts a little bit more genuine. I realized then by just doing that alone, reduced how many times I post. And I was like, okay. And I got more traction, I think, and more impact and feedback from more meaningful posts that were less frequent than just constant things that was going on. And when I see it in the world today of what I see right now, because you talk about Ferraris and everything else, I just saw a special the other day on TV that was talking about people who literally going to jet companies right now and paying them a couple $100 just to be able to take pictures of them inside a jet while it's sitting on the tarmac. They don't ever go nowhere.
Yep.
And so I look at a couple things of that just in terms of psychology of like where we're at is that one, somebody's willing to pay $300 to $400 for a fake photo for their own Instagram account. And I guarantee you, though, that person that took it he's thinking that's a $300 to $400 investment in himself and in his business and in his brand. And he doesn't realize that just like every public speaking event, every keynote speech, everything else I've ever done, authenticity will always win. And that's where it's at. So if you're broke right now, be broke. Like, I guarantee if you get on Instagram right now and explain to people what your struggles are financially and how you're trying to improve it, you will get 10 times better traction than you ever would holding a stack of cash that's not real, sitting in front of Ferrari in a parking lot that's not yours, talking about how you're living the good life. And everybody's going to go, how'd you get there? And you know what? You don't have a story to tell them because it's not real.
Plus, it's not
But
fulfilling
if you sat
because
there,
it's not real.
And that's what I'm saying. You're empty. The person that's reading it's empty. Nobody's getting anything out of it. So, I saw one of the best memes the other day that basically said, it's funny how rich people are starting to wear torn up jeans and Chuck Taylors, and poor people are starting to wear Gucci and Louis Vuitton.
Interesting.
And that's just dead on, man. Like, stop wasting your money on flash. I'm starting to get older, and I can tell you right now that nobody cares about your jeans in your 30s. Nobody cares about your shoes in your 40s. Nobody gives a damn about, any of that stuff when you get older. And most of the stuff of the nightclubs and popping bottles and everything else like that, of the crew that you're running with in your 20s, they're not even in your life 10 years later. It's like people couldn't tell you who in the world you even are 10 years later. That money is so much better in a marketplace. It's so much better in real estate investments. It's so much better in your family, invested in your business, invested in what you want to do. Wasting money, $300 to $400 so you can take a picture and on a fake plane is absolutely mind-boggling to me. In terms of social media, how it affects you personally. I started renovating this house about 3 months ago, and just due to sheer time, couldn't post anymore, couldn't do anything else, and I put the phone down. And I drastically saw improvement in my quality of life. Like, I just didn't scroll as much. I talk about it in my own book. I talk about it in everything else, that if you don't, give your mind something to grow on, to grow from everything else, it's a constant garden. The weeds will grow.
Yes.
And I'm very big on why, at least I try to make sure that my feeds that I'm looking at are very positive. They're based in gratitude. They're people I want to follow. I don't even follow too many like funny meme things because it's just negativity, or, there's just so many studies out there, man, like that I can get really deep into on how social media and what you view and what kind of you allow into your brain just through the conscious eye will affect 100% how you treat people, how your mood, your emotion, your energy, all that stuff. So I realized that when I put that phone down, even though I was looking at positive stuff, just removing it made me so much more energetic, so much more lively. I just feel like this lift in life in this past few months, and I definitely think it has to do with my just big step back from having a phone in my hand. So I know there's people out there that say, hey, like, what am I supposed to do? Like, my entire life, my business is around social media. And I say, hey, I agree with you. One of the tidbits I've gotten from a couple of people I follow is still take your pictures, do things like that, especially with your kids and other stuff. And then all you do is you wait till the end of the day, and then you bust them out, and then you post them all to your story at once. They're still good for 24 hours. And it takes you 5 minutes to post them to your story instead of constantly every hour being on your phone for 5-10 minutes at a time, posting to your story or making another post. You get home, you lie in bed, you bust it open, post 5 or 6 things to your story, post it, to Twitter, to Instagram, to this and that. And you can even schedule them, save them as drafts. And then you just wake up in the morning, and then throughout the day, if you have a timing thing, then you just open it up, hit draft, post. You don't have to spend all that time when you're literally sitting right next to loved ones, right next to friends, just glued to your phone. You're at lunch and you're typing away. Put the phone down, enjoy what is around you, take in the wonders, the joys of a human interaction and connection. That's where relationships are built, man. They're not built over the internet.
Kev, I want to get really real. It's weird calling you Kevin because I've been calling Kevin for every episode, 105 reps now. You resonated so strongly with all of that. This is unbelievable. So I'm very privileged at this point to spend a lot of quality time. I actually track it. So I'm up to 80 plus meetings with what I refer to as Millionaire Mentors. These are people that started with nothing, very difficult childhoods and like built their own wealth from scratch through hard work and from being very ghetto for a very long time. And what's fascinating to me is that none of them really care about their clothes or, their image. As a matter of fact, like a lot of them I'm trying to get on the podcast, and they are very private. They don't necessarily want to be, flashy. And what I find happening a lot, especially with this new echo chamber social media bubble, is that everyone's trying to kind of keep up with everybody else. So they're having to take, the law, right? Obviously, you can consume or you can invest. The investor always wins in the long run. The consumer's just going to be perpetually in debt, right? Here's the problem. Right. If you're young and you're trying to keep up with people who are ahead of you or who appear to be because they're taking pictures on jets that aren't real, you're going to have to spend extra money, take out more, borrow more money, and you're going to put yourself in a financial hole that you'll never dig out of. Kevin and I often talk about how we both had 6-figure jobs, me, well north of that, and I had more than enough money, but I was driving a 2004, and this was in 2014. I still drive a $2,500 car. I'm ghetto, man. And the reason why is because every dollar of my time, energy, and money, and my human resources are going into my own personal development in this podcast. And so I really wanted to bring that to the listeners because what you're saying, I believe, is so incredibly true. Like the picture of Mark Cuban, being ghetto. Remember, no one had a camera on Bill Gates when he was alone in a dark room creating DOS. You know what I mean? Yeah, so it's like build something, start small. If you're trying to get ahead of the game in the short run, you're kind of always going to lose. So how do we get someone to think more long term? Because you remind me of someone who's always been more of an investor than a consumer.
Kev, before you answer that, you have another half hour? I didn't know.
Yeah, of course.
I just want to make
100%.
sure. Perfect.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, because that was a long one.
I will tell you first, you're absolutely wrong. And then I'll answer how do you get somebody to do that?
Okay.
So I'll be perfectly honest. When I was going through all those struggles, like I said back in the time, and I fit every realm of the poster child of a Marine with PTSD. I had a massive compulsive gambling problem. And I spent like that too. I also had a job north of 6 figures. I also had laundry service, massage twice a week, food delivery, maid. I wasted money on just dumb stuff. And that wasn't even to be flashy. This is before social media. It's not like I was posting pictures of my maid, like maid's here.
Yeah, right.
It's just, I had that same mentality, and I think I just misconstrued it. I've always had that same kind of principle I told you that if you want to be a manager, act like a manager now. I think I had the same misguided approach, and I think a lot of the young people do too, is that because a lot of coaches teach that, if you want something, act like it now, that doesn't mean blow your money that you don't have. And that's what I lived. I lived I want to be successful and be at this level, so I'm going to live at this level. That doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. So for a younger person, or not even younger person, but just somebody who's starting and wants to move, how do you drive that home? there's so many difficult ways to do it. Cause I've had people give me the social kind of thing in return of like, well, you don't know what it's like to be in this circle of group or friends or whatever. And, women that are going with this guy and that, trust me, man, nothing's sexier to a woman than a man that owns his home.
Yeah.
Like those things, being able to be a provider. And I can tell you out there, if you're a young man and you think that a woman would like you more or less for the way that you dress or the car you drive or everything else, she is the wrong woman for you. 110%. If you are a woman and you are going after a young man who is driving a fancy car and everything else, I without being too upfront, I challenge you to look at his credit, his home life. Does he own rent? Does he live with his mother? Does he live with 6 roommates? Because it's really easy for when 6 guys get a nice house to drive a fancy car. Like his rent is $300. Is he ever going to be able to actually provide you and give you a family and a home that you can live in? Because the guy that's rocking around right now in Target jeans and a white t-shirt that owns his own home at 24, he is definitely going to be the guy you want to be with in the long run. And the woman who is finding value in that guy is the woman you want to be with in the long run. Those are the things that it's just really starting to understand that preparation for tomorrow is so important, but the grind is today. And to really embrace the grind, that's the fun part. Is to go after it. That's why you look at a billionaire that's worth so much money that could have retired years ago. Why is he not retired? Because the grind is the fun part. The constant improvement, that always trying to improve yourself, to improve those lives around you, to be able to give back, to be able to donate more, all that kind of things. If all those things are driving you, man, you don't care about what car you drive. I'd tell you to go back and listen to the earlier part of the podcast and realize that you deserve none of this. You don't deserve a good car. You don't deserve great clothes. Start looking for something outside of yourself and watch the success start flying towards you.
Kevin, so you described earlier on the podcast this very, that might come off as extreme, but I think what you're trying to describe is radical humility. You've obviously had some really tough moments in your childhood at 17 with that, passing of your friend, like that made you realize that you deserve nothing by default and you have to earn everything and appreciate everything. So I always say this, I say the opposite of entitlement is appreciation. And I think that a lot of people are kind of entitled, like showing up is enough. And you always talk about being prepared. I've studied between reading your book, the Relentless Power course that you allowed us to review. You keep talking about being prepared. Not being prepared is preparing to fail. So my question for you is similar to what I just asked you, but you basically said that I was wrong and that you were not always long-term thinking and that you were not always financially investing versus consuming. What made that shift for you? Two questions. One, why do you think people fall so victim to that? And then for you personally, like when did you shift and why?
I definitely had it in my head, and I think I put this in my head back in the combat days that I was going to die in combat. That was kind of my thing. Like I was never going to make it past 24. I don't know where it came from. I don't know what kind of sadistic behavior that all came from, but that's where it was. And when I got out, I mean, I went through an addiction phase. I went through alcoholism. I went through definitely a struggling transition time of suicidal ideation, all kinds of stuff like that. I really struggled with PTSD and a lot of separation stuff from the military and just transitioning in general. I got out of the Marine Corps, went through a divorce, had issues with children and things like that all at the same time. And it really did weigh on me. And I had a very kind of F it mentality of live for today because you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. And I think a lot of young people do, especially if they've experienced trauma and tragedy, anything else like that. To where it's just, you never know what's going to happen. Live it up, live it up, live it up. I have a friend that died, at 17. I had guys that died of me in combat. Like they're not here anymore. You never know what's going to happen. And I think it goes back to that same thing of finding the opportunity in adversity. And that wasn't ingrained in me yet, or I was missing it in the bigger picture, to where I realized how much of a discredit and dishonor I was doing to people who didn't make it. And I used to use this in the fitness world, when I would be burnt out and couldn't run anymore, or couldn't do another squat, couldn't do another leg press, and just be like, dude, be thankful you got legs. I got friends that don't have legs. They would kill to be pressing this leg machine right now. And that's a weird, kind of weird way, but that was what I used to motivate myself. And at some point, I don't know if there was a defining moment or not, man, but somewhere around that same time that I really devoted my life to fitness. And I will always, tell the NPC and the fitness world in general and everything else that it did save my life, because it gave me so much direction and drive that pulled me out of so many other addictions, because I've just let fitness become my addiction. But at least it was a healthy one. And it let me work a lot on myself at the same time, to where I said, you know what, if these people who aren't here, if they could talk to you now, would they be happy with what you're doing? Would they be proud that you made it and they didn't, in the way that you're living your life? And I just realized that I couldn't answer that at all. I couldn't even come close to saying that anybody that I felt I was living for would be proud of the life I was living. And so it just really kind of humbled me into like, dude, you need to make some serious changes. And so I keep that in the back of my mind now. If I was lucky enough to be a guy who made it out of combat, or I wasn't the guy that, I could have been riding with in that day. Situation could have been different in so many other times in my life, where I am lucky enough, and I look at that, and a lot of it has to do honestly with Christian faith, but that, and you don't have to be a Christian, but I'm sure there's something that's happened in your life, or something that's gone on in your life, that you can say that you necessarily did not deserve. That's something outside of your power, something outside of what, your control is, happened to you, that benefited you, that you probably weren't worthy of. And if you can come to terms with that, then I think you can really get to terms with the whole aspect of grace, whether you believe in the universe or God or Allah or whatever it is. I'm not here to preach to you. I'm just here to tell you that if you understand more that there's something bigger than you, and then you start to contribute to that. And if you live in right now your life like, hey, screw it, because you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. You get hit by a bus. That's very well and true. But if that bus never comes, you're going to be pretty disappointed at 85 years old. And that's probably the biggest thing that kind of changed me in so many different ways is I think I live in I never want to regret, man. I never want to get to the end of my life and regret it. And I've really gone through some evaluations to where I don't think I'm ever going to get to the end of my life and go, man, I wish I would have popped more bottles. I wish I would have went to more strip clubs. I wish I would have done more drugs. I truly don't believe anyone can say that they can honestly say that. But I think they can get to the end and say, I wish I spent more time with my family. I wish I would have took that chance on that business. I wish I would have went up and talked to that girl. I wish I would have saved more money. I wish I would have done this. Like, I think those things are real. So it's just really prioritizing life. And if you're living in this world of you never know what's going to happen tomorrow, you're 100% right. So take that mentality and shift it to the way you talk to people, the way you treat people, the way you love people. But in terms of the long term, you always got to be prepared. And that's prepared for things financially, prepared for things mentally, prepared for things, you said it, and Tony has the best way, but you trade your expectations for appreciation, your whole life will change.
Kevin, that was so beautifully said, and you finished up so strong. I was actually going to say something, but you kind of finished my thought. But I like what you said about some people are so focused on living it up because they don't know that they'll be here tomorrow. But like for Alan and I, that means that we have to impact as many people as we can today. Like that's my version of living it up. My version of living it up is being unbelievably vulnerable so I can hopefully help somebody. So I resonate very highly with that. And I appreciate you, bringing that so clearly and concisely to the listeners.
I agree with you 100, man.
So I think that all three of us here have worked really hard towards something. We've all been fitness competitors. You were in the military. You have a next level mind. And I think that people are often unhappy with their results, but their results usually mirror their effort. And something I've heard you say a lot is, I want you to be all in. I need you to be all in. You have to be all in. What does all in mean to you, and how have you used that in your life?
All in is, I take this approach, honestly, you understanding the fitness world. I used to get into arguments with trainers about this. I've never believed in the slowly cut back on pizza, slowly come back on this, we'll slowly get into a workout routine. I am not a dip your toe kind of person. I think you should dive right into the deep end, and natural instincts will kick in and you'll figure out how to swim. I I think that we are controlled too much by, without getting really deep into it, we have human needs. You can read about it. So look up like Tony Robbins' 6 Human Needs. You can look at my book, courses, or anything
Kevin,
else
rattle
like
them
that.
off, man. I say them all the time.
And,
Our listeners know them.
So yeah, if you guys know that, the thing is that we all our behaviors are driven by those needs.
Mm-hmm.
So the only way to truly shock the body and go all in and make a drastic change is to find new ways to fill that need. And if I do that with this tiptoe effect, I'm always going to want to be able to fall back to the other behavior because that's truly what's fulfilling the need for me. This new little thing I'm doing is not meeting it at the same level. But if I go all in and eliminate the other behavior, I can hopefully match that same need on that same level. And then it becomes a permanent change and a drastic breakthrough. But if I just tiptoe here and there, I'm never going to be able to meet those needs at the same level. And so I'm always going to want to revert back to that old behavior because that's what feels good. That's what's meeting those needs for me. So the all in effect is, I put it in my book, purge your life. Purge your life of people, purge your life of the things that aren't supposed to be there. That's why I say, you think about that next level CEO or that next level person or that family man or whatever. Is that guy at strip clubs throwing money? Is that guy popping bottles, like wasting money? Is that guy hanging out with drug addicts? An alcoholic would never go hang out at a bar. You can't do the same thing. So you have to purge your life of those things and go all in, commit. And the moment you make that decision, you will change. You will change.
I believe that. So there's this great speech. I don't know if you've heard it. At the University of Austin, Texas, I believe, Matthew McConaughey said a speech. He said, the first path to finding our identity and who we are is to the process of elimination. Going out and trying things and realize I don't belong here. So for you personally, you said that you had an alcohol problem. The listeners know that I also did. And fitness saved all of our lives, us three. No doubt. And Kevin's always had fitness in his corner. When he was in his darkest places, he went to the gym. For the listeners, those 6 needs, you've got certainty, uncertainty, significance, love and connection. You've got growth and contribution. The listeners have heard me say them. I shout out Tony's TED Talk all the time, my favorite TED Talk of all time. But you mention in your book, and I believe in the Relentless Power program, that if you're meeting at least 3 of those needs with something, you're going to get addicted to it. And so when you're purging your life of the persons, places, and things that no longer serve you, you're basically jumping into something that's going to replace that addiction. For me and for you, it sounds like if fitness became a priority, that means that alcohol no longer can be. Is that accurate?
Oh, yeah, 100%. So you have to know yourself a little bit too. So I'm a significance-driven person, always have been, and it not significance in I need to be Instagram famous, but I know just through self-evaluation that I like to be special and unique. It's something that drives me to be different. So that was and we can meet these needs, good or bad. So at the time, being a Marine with PTSD, combat veteran with alcohol and drug problem, that's different. That's unique. Even though it's a very negative connotation, it still makes you special, and you're meeting that need. And when you can start to psychologically understand that, so being a guy who was, strong and extremely strong for his size and shredded and competing and on stage and lights on him. I mean, it's a very significance driven sport. So it met that need on the same level for me. It is a constant. You have to be involved in it daily and day in and day out. So, I mean, there's this addiction factor that's even kind of within it. You have to be almost obsessive. You create relationships within that gym. There's your love, your connection. All those things are happening for you. So for anyone that's out there that's struggling, and you feel that you are in an addictive manner, you need to really try to step back and, download that TED Talk, take a look at it and say, what drives me? Am I certainty driven? Am I variety driven? Am I significance driven? Love and connection, and then you kind of have to try and do some self-analyzation, look at what. This is something I don't like. I do. Why am I doing that? Am I meeting a need? And the moment you can realize that, you go, oh, wow, I am. How do I replace that? How do I meet that need elsewhere? How can I get somebody to help me meet that need elsewhere? And it's a really impactful way to make some changes.
Kevin, that's how this whole podcast came about. It's, every single person has thoughts, and your thoughts are what control your actions, and your actions make up the entirety of your life. And most people, I feel, not most people, but a lot of people are living on autopilot, and they're just basing every decision off their past and the way they felt. And it's like, when you can ask yourself the hard questions, like that's what you seem to be really good at, asking yourself the hard questions and then answering them the correct way. And I think that, maybe that has served you just as much as anything else has. So I say the same thing to the listeners. You have to be willing to ask yourself the tough questions. They're going to hurt, and the answers are going to hurt, but that pain will pay off in the future as long as you stay in alignment with that. That wasn't a question, so that was a statement.
No, that's 100. You're 100% correct, and I think it all kind of webs together. I think the more that I had that very humbling kind of approach that I deserve nothing, it makes it much easier for me to answer those questions because my ego is out the door. I don't deserve to be here in the greater scheme of sense of world creation, God and how I believe. So when I have to look at myself and say, hey man, are you being a jackass? And are you meeting these needs in selfish ways? And are you addicted to this behavior? Like, what is wrong with you? What is it about you that you don't like? I just think it's really easy for me to self-evaluate because of that understanding. I don't hold myself in such a high regard that I can't kind of put myself in check.
Kevin, I have something that I think is going to resonate. I've been wrong before, but we'll see. So have you ever heard of a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying?
Yes, but I have not read it.
Okay, it's by Bronnie Ware. I have a flashcard in my pocket at all times that has all 5 of the top 5 regrets. Basically, she worked in hospice with the terminally ill, and she started to notice patterns that they were all saying, I wish, I wish, I wish. And the number one regret is I wish I had lived a life true to myself and not what others expected of me. That's of
deep.
Right? Yeah. And so I think that because I have that flashcard in my pocket at all times, I'm always doing, you said reverse engineer. What was the thing that you showed me?
Oh, I showed
reverse
you.
Planning.
Reverse planning.
I reverse engineer regret. And I have been saying this to my clients recently, and I haven't said it enough to the listeners, but what I start doing is reverse engineering regret. In other words, what can I do that I will never regret? And what am I doing today that I might regret in the future? That's the tough questions. And
that's really good, man.
Thank you, brother. I recently came up with that. I mean, that's been years in the making, just kind of spewing over into all my personal development here. But when it comes to, it seems like all entitlement has been stripped from you. And I genuinely believe, and this is kind of a radical ideology for most people, but I believe that, like you, I deserve nothing by default. I believe everything worth having must be earned through virtue. When did you start to, let me rephrase the question. For our listeners who may or may not still have some entitlement, because maybe they had somewhat of a privileged childhood, they grew up in this country, right? Very privileged, we have roof over our head, clothes on our back, food on our table. What could you suggest to them, or what could you bring to them about entitlement and how it's actually a bad thing?
Obviously, if you're truly entitled, I encourage you to travel the world, get out of the tourist destinations, and experience culture in areas that are far less fortunate than your own. There's nothing more humbling than traveling the world and seeing how truly great America has it. Because we are driven in a world that is so media driven. We march down streets and protest and sue and complain and write petitions over every little thing in the world. And I think it's really hard sometimes to sit back and think about, that you have people, signing petitions and picketing over a blown pass interference call because that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest thing that we have to be concerned about at that moment. And, we complain about everything that comes our way, but yet there's a little girl somewhere right now in Africa that's on her 9th mile walk with 13 gallons of water dragging behind her while holding her little 3-year-old brother. And she's still got 13 miles to go home. And that water's just for today. She's going to do it again tomorrow, and you start to really understand that world and realize what are you complaining about? Are you really standing in a store with your mom complaining that, your credit card balance isn't high enough for you to go back to school with your new shopping? It's just really tough to put somebody in that kind of understanding without experiencing the full world. If you don't have that opportunity, I feel like if you're listening to this podcast, you probably are already in the right headspace.
Thank you so much for saying that. Appreciate you. We appreciate you.
We needed that.
Yeah, right. Big win.
So I'm probably not I'm probably preaching to the choir in a lot of this, but if you're somebody that you think you still struggle with certain bits of entitlement, because we all do. You're an American. You live in a free country with a lot of things that are afforded to you. I just think to just kind of always start the day with this form of gratitude. Wake up, go through the things that you're thankful for, go through all the things that you envision in your life that bring joy to you. And it really does change the way I think you approach your day, because then when you go into that restaurant and you get bad service, you just realize how much more that, just 20 minutes ago, you were in your head talking about how great life was. It's really hard for you to flip on a dime and get really upset because somebody screwed your eggs order up. So I would definitely say going through daily gratitude exercises, really, sometimes gratitude journaling for some people really works, really writing things out on what they're grateful for, things they have, the opportunities that are in front of them, things that they want to have in the future. It really just changes the mind to really start your day less entitled.
One of the things I say, Kevin, and I didn't say it, somebody wrote it, I don't remember who it was, so I cannot give them their due credit, but if you woke up tomorrow with only the things that you said you were grateful for today, what would you have? And I think that's a good way to frame it. It's like, you don't deserve anything. Nothing's guaranteed. So you should really, truly be thankful for everything you have, everybody you have, every experience you have, and every opportunity you have, because, most of them, there's no guarantee that they're going to be there. So we have like 10 minutes left. Alan and I each have a question that we ask every guest, and then we will let you plug away all of your good things. So My question that I have asked every guest so far, I believe, we're given 90, 100, 110, 130 years, if you're Alan, on this earth. And
goals.
We get to do, living in this country, we get to do whatever we want, basically. What do you hope to accomplish with your life, and what do you want to be remembered for?
Accomplish with my life. The main two goals that I always have accomplished with my life is to just be the best man I can be to my wife. And I get a two-part in that, because I think by doing that, I set my daughter up to witness what she should have in her life in return. I always say I don't want my daughter to marry a guy like her father. I want my daughter to marry a guy like her mom's husband. So that's kind of, really what I want to accomplish. And I think in terms of what I want to be remembered for is I just never want to be complacent. I never want to get complacent. Complacency kills. That's a battlefield term, but I believe it in life. And I even believe it as a believer. Matthew 24, like you have to continue and to do work. Even I've even heard, Christians say, the world is just a waiting room. And then no, it's not. No, it is not. You are here to live out life to the fullest. You are here to do good works. You are here, and not that good works will save you, but you are here to continuously put in effort. And at no time do I ever want to be caught sitting on my ass waiting. Right now is always the right time. I don't care what it is you want to do. Right now is the right time. So, if you are thinking about getting back and reaching out to somebody's life and apologizing or telling them how much you love them, if you're thinking about starting a business, if you're thinking about going back to school, if you're thinking about cutting that friendship off or that toxic relationship, right now is the right time. It's just the biggest thing I think people do wrong is they get comfortable. And they get comfortable in their marriages, they get comfortable raising their kids, they get comfortable in their jobs. And I think that's when everything starts to fail. I just think that you can never get complacent. You constantly have to improve. You constantly have to work. I never want to sit back and look back and go, man, did I stop loving my wife? Did I just wake up and walk around as a roommate with her? Did we just exist in the same house? I want to make sure that every day I wake up with an effort to love her. I want to make an effort to be there in my kid's life. I want to make an effort to grow myself. And I think it starts right now. I think the best thing that you can put it to in terms is, people always say I'll donate money when I get rich. Somebody will never give 10,000 out of 100 if they won't give a dime out of $1. You got to start right now. no matter what it is you want to do.
That was a very powerful answer. I have a lot of things I want to say. One thing I wanted to say for sure for the listeners and for you, I saw a post on your Instagram where you said that you're unbelievably grateful for the woman in your life. I think this was actually a post with Tony. He's a huge hero of mine, so that's probably one of the ones that I read. But that's huge. I think that for the listeners, and I've said this many times, but I want to repeat it because this is an emotional moment for sure. Everything that we fail to appreciate will inevitably depreciate. And everything that you appreciate appreciates. In other words, it grows. I look back on my life, and the things that I regret most, the mistakes that I've made, are almost always when I failed to appreciate someone or something in my life. So that's just something I wanted to bring to the listeners. So my next question for you, and I'm very fascinated to hear your answer. I wear this chain around my neck with the North Star. It's the brightest star in the sky. It's constant. It never moves. It's unwavering. It's a guide. What?
I was showing it to the camera.
Oh, he was showing it to the camera. He's pointing at me. And so I believe we grow, we change, we evolve. You're obviously into personal development, growth. You've changed a lot over the years, clearly. But I do believe there's a part of us that never changes. And I'm very curious, what about you never changed?
Well, I think honestly, I like what you said earlier about, with Matthew McConaughey, the same thing that, I've had a lot of, I think, personality traits per se. I've had a lot of images, different groups I've ran and run with, and different hats I've worn in business and different adventures I've taken just in life. I think that my caring heart has always been there. I think that's never changed. I think I have slowly developed and evolved to understand how to be there and help people the most in the long run. But I've always tried to give to people. I've always tried to feed the homeless guy in the corner, even when I was broke. I've been without a home myself, lived out of my own car, so I feel like I've always wanted to help people all the way back, even in probably like high school times. I've always been like, the guy that was there to have the shoulder to cry on, I would have to say that's probably been a lot that's kept me guided and driven throughout the years, even though I've had so many wrong turns that I think a lot of them at least had good intentions.
Kevin, Alan and I actually have the battle going on for who can have the biggest heart. So I think that is one of the reasons that we both resonated so highly with you, because you can tell that, yeah, some people might say, like, the way you say things is with tough love, but it's all from the heart. And you're using your experiences and your lessons and your knowledge to try to help people as best as you can. And I truly believe that's with your heart. So say somebody's listening to this podcast and they're thinking, this Kevin Armentrout dude's pretty cool. Where can I learn more about him? Where can I get coaching from him? Where can I take his course? Where can people find you, my friend? Plug away.
So I have a pretty distinct name. It is Armentrout, Armentrout, trout like the fish. That was my nickname for a long time. So been trying to fight that one off for years. But Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, everything is a simple Kevin Armentrout search to find any of my social media feeds. Like I said, I don't post a lot anymore, but I am trying to get to the point when I do post, it is meaningful content that you get something out of. KevinArmentrout.com is where you can find out the most. That's my website that offers a link to the new course I just put out with wealthfit.com. But there is a link that will take you there from KevinArmentrout.com. That's called Relentless Power. It is a personal development course. And WealthFit's a great thing. They do financial investment courses, real estate investment, business startups, you name it. So if there's something that you are looking for to improve on beyond personal development, they have a ton of different coaches and courses there. So it's a membership thing that you can sign up and take any of them. I also offer one-on-one coaching. There's a link on my website that you can schedule a clarity call with me, that we sit down kind of one-on-one and decide what it is that you want to improve on and what's the best path for you. I do public speaking engagements. And I also, if you are in the business world, I specialize in doing corporate leadership training, to where I come in and meet with your team, look at some of your managerial approaches, change management kind of issues, and see if we can't get better rapport and productivity out of your team through leadership. I have a book out on Amazon called Relentless State of Mind.
Just
Still
bought
available.
it today. Sorry.
It's and have 2 more books in the works coming out hopefully by the end of this year. So, if you follow me, I'll be putting out updates on those.
Hell yeah. I will vouch. Alan and I both went through your program. We both had very good. I really enjoyed it. Alan and I both have created programs and we've consumed programs, and yours is awesome. So if you're listening to this, I would definitely suggest checking it out. I would not say that if I did not believe in it, and I truly do.
Yeah, I have the worksheet right here. It's all fundamentals, people. Fundamentals. Clarity is everything. I also want to say that I just bought your book on Amazon and on Kindle today, but I have the hard copy coming in the mail, and I wanted to set an intention to meet you in person at some point and have you sign that book. That's kind of a little thing I like to do.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm down to set that intention. I feel the same way. Get it, put it out there. Of course, I'm anti power of the universe, but
we'll make it happen. We'll get you back on the show in 100 episodes or something and see what's coming up.
I definitely feel like, if you say it, it just puts intention into your body to take action, not to make the universe happen for you.
Exactly.
We always want to do a second, if it goes well, which this did, we always set the intention to do a round 2 in person. And obviously, I think that would be something amazing. We are unbelievably grateful that you sat down with us today, Kev, and you added so much value. And I really want to thank you for being so vulnerable and digging deep. I know you're holding back emotions, dealing with the thoughts that you were going through. So I really, really want you to know I do appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate you both, man. I honestly had a great time, and I will give you the same intention back. My wife has always wanted to see and visit Boston, me, myself. So maybe I'll make that happen this year.
I would love that, Kevin. Please do. Hopefully by then we have a much better studio with, fake pictures in jets. So
nice. Yeah, we'll just go rent a jet for an hour.
Exactly.
All right, ladies and gents, we hope you enjoyed listening as much as we enjoyed recording. That is Mr. Kevin Armentrout. We'll talk to you later.
Talk to you soon.
Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed our latest episode featuring Kevin Armentrout. Up next, we have a very special Small Talks episode featuring one of Alan's favorite words, consistency.
Yes, thank you, Amy, one of our original listeners, for suggesting consistency. Consistency is king. The compound effect of small daily disciplines compounded over time yield massive results. We are going to do a Small Talks episode on one of my favorite words. I cannot wait.
I want to thank and commend the people who have been reaching out and taking advantage of the 20-minute call. I know it's fear-chasing. I know you can be a little nervous at first, but so far everybody has been extremely happy, and it's truly amazing with what you can accomplish in 20 minutes. So if you're going through anything, please reach out, slide into the DMs at NeverQuitKid, and we'll help you out.
Talk to you soon.
Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for listening to another episode of the Hyper Conscious Podcast.
Going hyper-conscious will absolutely change your life, because if you understand why something is the way it is, now you have the power to change it. If you going hyper-conscious with us has changed your life in any way, please share this episode with one of your friends, because the more people that go hyper-conscious, the better this world's going to be for everybody.
And if you would kindly leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, that would help us make more people hyper-conscious, and we would be greatly appreciative.
Thank you.
Bye.